Good day, everyone. This is Don Green in Las Vegas, and many of you know me as being a lawyer for over 4 decades in California and Nevada. You know me from the YouTube shows, the shows on the American Guns and Glory Network, and from the gun shows here in Las Vegas and other parts of Clark County. I've been telling everyone for the past several months that this is a very important judicial election cycle. And in the 40 years that I've been a lawyer in Nevada and California, I've never seen such an important decision for the voting public is to elect our district court and our justices of the peace. As part of our continuing coverage for in the election cycle this year, this morning and this afternoon, I'm pleased to present Judge Erika Mendoza, currently the district court judge in Department 27 of the 8th Judicial District Court here in Clark County, Nevada. And we'll get to some of her endorsements in just a moment. And Judge Mendoza, how are you today?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
And we'll get into your background a little bit more and some of your goals and your accomplishments. But let's get right into it for our viewing and listening audience. Tell us about the organizations, who and which are supporting you, and why that's important.
Sure. So I have the endorsement personally of DA Steve Wolfson, of Sheriff Kevin McMahill, and then also of all of the law enforcement agencies, not just locally, but across the state. There's 2 main large police union organizations that have both backed me. The first one being NAPSO and the second one being the Public Safety Alliance of Nevada. And those 2 organizations are comprised of tens of other law enforcement organizations, including all of the ones around Clark County, Henderson, Metro, the Marshals. They've all endorsed me, so I have all of the law enforcement support. Additionally, I have the firefighters support. I have the Latin Chamber of Commerce,
Yes.
And also labor unions.
And we'll see those slides in a moment. Tell us, why is it important for these organizations to interview you or to vet you or to speak to you about gaining their endorsement? Why is that important?
Well, it's important to me because these are people who I work very hard to make sure that their positions are understood and supported. And I think it's important to the members of Clark County because these are groups that people can look to make sure that their own values are represented in their elected officials. And so if people aren't very familiar with different political candidates like
Yes.
judges, these organizations are someone that they can look to. If they know, I generally support law enforcement and have similar values, they can go look to these organizations to see what kind of people they're endorsing.
So in this process, Judge, when you go before the panel, let's say the policemen's union or the firefighters, is there like a group of people or is it one person who interviews you?
So every organization is a little bit different, but generally what will happen is each organization has their own process, and a lot of times we'll have to fill out questionnaires that kind of describe our background and our values, and those questionnaires get distributed amongst a group of a board. And then after that's submitted beforehand, you go and you interview, usually with a group of people, and they can usually reach out to all the candidates, so they all have the opportunity to do that. And then afterwards, they all get together and have a vote and talk about what they liked and didn't like about each candidate, and ultimately offer their endorsement.
And in this endorsement process, do they have to give you an endorsement, or they could just say, I'm sorry, we're not giving it to you?
No.
Can there be a dual endorsement of candidates?
There are some organizations that do
They
that.
do that. Let's talk about some of the ones that people in Clark County, they may have heard about but not be so familiar. LIUNA. What is LIUNA?
LIUNA is a laborers organization. They're one of their most noteworthy one of their most noteworthy accomplishments of recent was they had a very strong role in building Allegiant
Stadium
Yes.
here where the Raiders play.
Correct.
And they have
Yes.
concerts and other venues there. Yes, well, that's good. So you've got laborers, you've got the Latin Chamber. If we could have the next slide, please. You've got the laborers. You've got the endorsements from the district attorney, Steve Wolfson. Let's have another slide, please. and we've got them from the firefighters. Let's stay right here for just a moment. The firefighters, and these are, people see firefighters every day, whether they're involved with the firemen or they see a fire truck going by. Why is it that you think that the firefighters have given you their endorsement?
Well, they're very confident that they can trust me to always follow the law. They have a lot of concerns, both from kind of a law enforcement angle and also from protecting their workers in terms of union negotiations, workers' comp issues, and they really need someone who they are confident can follow the laws as written to give them the consistency and predictability that they need to protect their workers.
All right. Now, in this election cycle, you've got, we're not going to talk about your opponents, but there are several people who are running for office in Department 27. Is this correct?
Yes.
And after the appointment process, were you expected to, have a transition period, or were you expected to get right in the saddle and start writing?
No, got right. I think the second day of my job as a judge, I was on the bench handling a calendar, doing sentencing, motion work, jumping right in.
Let's talk about Erika Mendoza, the person right now. Mm-hmm. Tell our viewing and listening audience something about yourself and why you think that your family and work background translates into how you can associate with litigants who come before you.
So, well, even before I was a lawyer, I grew up in a working class family in upstate New York. I worked from the time I was 15 all the way through till today. Before I went to law school, I've had every type of job imaginable, but mostly all in the hospitality industry and restaurants. That's what I did when I first moved to Las Vegas almost 20 years ago. And working in, what's really the heartbeat of our community is what made me fall in love with Las Vegas. And when I first started as a lawyer, some people pointed out to me, and it turned out to be very true, that hey, you have this restaurant experience. You're used to working, with all different customers and talking to a bar full of customers. That's your jury right there. And that experience really taught me how to, get to know people from all different walks of life, and being able to relate to people in that way is really important as a judge, both in terms of being able to see things from each side's point of view and also managing a jury and being able to talk to them effectively.
And then, as my understanding, you are a working mother.
Yes.
So it's not that you just say you got 3 jobs. You got the kids, the family life, and then your judgeship.
Yes.
So tell us how you feel that being a working mother and had to work for all these years, how you think that may translate into how you can see a particular litigant. Let's say a litigant who's pro se. Mm-hmm. Do you think that'll help you in dealing with that person? Sometimes they're very difficult to deal with, these people who are representing themselves. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Tell us how you think that this life experience helps you.
Well, like I said, working in environments where I had to deal with the public, I very much understand how to talk to people. And I think with pro se people, most of all, it helps if you just listen to them. They just need to be heard a lot of times. And while we can't give legal advice, kind of just talking them through what's going on and directing them to different resources is very helpful. And sometimes, emotions get high, but as long as everybody, and if that happens, I'll ask them to please step out and take a break. But as soon as everybody collects themselves and can treat everybody in a respectable manner, they're welcome back in with no bias or prejudice.
Now, our 8th Judicial District Court, would you agree that it is probably one of the busiest, it's definitely the busiest court in the state of Nevada, but you believe that per capita, that is per case per judge, one of the highest percentages in the United States?
It is an incredibly large caseload.
And I take it that your day starts very early and ends late at night.
It does.
And that's by necessity.
Yes.
And I take it that your prior training as a chief deputy district attorney, that helps you out.
As a district attorney, as a mom, as a working person since I was 15, yes, I'm well versed in having long days.
Let's look at the structure of the court. In our 8th Judicial District Court, can you tell our viewers and our listeners, tell us exactly what a district court judge does as opposed to justice court, municipal court, and administrative courts?
So the district court is where we have jury trials. My court handles both criminal and civil. For criminal, we do felony jury trials. Normally, when a criminal case starts in the system, they start in justice court for a preliminary hearing to just show that you have probable cause to move forward towards a trial. And then after that preliminary hearing, they come up to district court, and that's where we have the trials. And if they don't go to trial, if they plead guilty and it's part of some kind of negotiation ahead of time, I handle those pleas. Also, I handle any motion work about whether or not certain evidence is going to come in at trial. And then ultimately, I'm the one who does all the sentencings. So I'm the one who decides whether or not someone should get probation or if they need to go to prison and for how long.
Yes.
And then for civil cases, again, it's the jury trials, and it's where the amount in controversy is over $15,000.
So tell us about how many jury trials do you think that you did as a chief deputy district, or as a district attorney and as a chief deputy district attorney?
Probably between 30 and 35.
In about 10 or 15 years of practice.
Yes.
So, and you were not only did you do these, but you were expected to do jury trials as a chief deputy and as a deputy district attorney. Is that correct?
Correct.
And would you tell the audience and the viewers, they might not know about what it is. You just don't walk into a jury trial. What about the preparation, and how does the preparation for that jury trial translate into your preparation for your morning calendar as a judge?
Well, the preparation is incredibly daunting and intense and time consuming. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months and months. You have to understand all of the evidence that you have. You have to turn that into a way to present it to a jury so they understand everything that's happened. You have to turn it into exhibits, whether or not you're using photos or videos or sometimes actual physical items if we have to bring in maybe a gun that's been used as evidence. You also have to prepare jury instructions. You have to meet with witnesses and talk to them about what they saw and how they're involved in this case to figure out how to present their version to the jury. And then also you have to deal with lots of motion work in terms of if you have to file something with the judge in advance to get a special piece of evidence in, or you deal with if the defense is filing motions to exclude evidence. And then ultimately you have to be able to tell the story in a way that the jury is going to understand, and while also making sure that the defendant's rights are protected. Because ultimately, as a prosecutor, our goal is justice, which doesn't always mean getting a conviction and the most prison time as possible.
Okay, now, as a judge, all this comes to you, and you're required to sift through things and manage not just the trial, but you've got civil calendar tomorrow in the morning. Wednesday, you've got a criminal calendar, and you're in a jury trial. And how is it that you feel that your trial experience as a prosecutor translates over into how you can relate to the jury and managing their time so that these good citizens are not inconvenienced?
So my caseload at the DA's office was particularly well suited for this transition because I was the team chief of the gun crimes unit, and our case criteria on the gun crimes unit was complex felony gun crimes. And what that generally means is multiple defendants and multiple events. So often it would be a series of convenience store robberies. We'd have 10 robberies with 3 people involved. And being able to manage that number of events, that number of people, that amount of evidence, and sometimes there's evidence that's only admissible or useful for one event and or for one of the defendants. And so being able to keep all of that organized and being able to understand how it all works together as a piece of a puzzle is really important in order to be able to translate to a judge in terms of being able to manage all these different things that I have going on. So the organizational skills, the attention to detail is really important in being able to balance everything that's going on as a judge, and also transitioning back and forth from civil to criminal and the different things that are going on in the courtroom.
So you believe that this experience which you've just outlined and the way that you're applying it now and the way that you were expected to apply on the very first day that you put on that robe, you feel that in all of this that you've learned something about judicial temperament.
Oh, very much so.
And I'll bet you a last dollar that you've appeared probably before just about every judge in the district court. There are some that, like Judge Denton, does specialty court for business courts, but that you've seen them. So you've had firsthand knowledge from being either a litigator or as a representing the state of Nevada. You've actually seen how these judges handle certain particular types of cases. Is that correct?
Yes.
So tell us about why you think that your overall life experience, your experience as a deputy district attorney, your experience as a chief deputy, and now your experience as a judge, how is your temperament just frozen or is it evolving?
Oh, it's always evolving. I think just in watching all of the different judges, as you mentioned, and seeing what's been effective so far in the courtroom, I think the most important thing to remember is that as a judge, you're setting the tone for the courtroom. So you have to present yourself in the way that you're expecting of the people in front of me. I will never ask something of the people in front of me that I can't give to them. So I'm always on time, prepared, well-researched and thoughtful and ready to make a decision. I also think it's incredibly important to be kind and courteous, but still you have to remain in control and make sure that people understand that they're not going to be able to get away with any shenanigans or disrespect while they're in your courtroom.
Suppose, for example, that a man is indicted and the case gets assigned in your court. And this is a man who chopped off the arms of 4 kids at a nursery school. And his attorney wants a bail hearing. Even though you may find that distasteful, and you've got young children who you want to protect families, correct?
Of course.
Are you going to give that defendant who's charged with this committing this horrendous crime, are you going to give him equal deference to the same guy that stole some money at a tax service?
Well, everybody's subject to the same rules of law. For bail settings, our biggest question is, does this person pose a danger to the community? And also, are they a flight risk? And so I go through that same analysis for every person that's in front of me. Now, of course, the man who cut off children's arms, those facts play into my determination as to whether or not he presents a danger to the community if he is to be released.
Suppose he's a certified public accountant, married 30 years, went out drinking one night, and then the next day he just decided to go attack this nursery school. Even with his background, you have to factor in danger to the community.
Correct.
But you would still give him the time of day.
Yes.
Isn't there a Nevada Supreme Court decision from about 4 or 5 years ago that requires you to go through these factors?
Valdez Jimenez.
Okay, and the same, what about the guy that stole the money at the tax service?
We go through the same process, same considerations for every single person.
Okay. Now, in the civil realm, you're going to have all kinds of what are known as motions, papers like for summary judgment. They want to cancel the case. And suppose that it's a real close case on summary judgment. Let's say it's a promissory note, and even though you feel that the little guy should get a break, but the big corporation who has this $1 million promissory note for a business, they may be entitled to that. Will that factor in your decision, or are you going to apply the law rather than your emotions?
My feelings can come into play where the law is very clear. So for motions for summary judgment, if there's a material dispute of fact, even though I might not think it seems fair on the inside, I have to set that aside and just decide based on the law. My job is not to insert my feelings or my policy positions into issues where the law is clear. Where the law is clear, I have to just decide according to the law. And to the extent that I think the law is unreasonable or unfair, that's something for legislators to deal with.
So in everything that you feel that you have to apply the law.
Of course.
In a reasonable manner, and can you legislate even though you don't like the law? Can you still have to apply it?
Correct.
Because you've got bosses in Carson City.
Correct.
You got the Nevada Supreme Court.
And the people.
And the people. Tell us a little bit about why you feel that your decisions should be careful and thoughtful. Is that just because you don't want to be reversed on appeal, or do you think that's the right thing to do, or all of the above?
Well, all of the above, but I think that the 3 different branches of government working in the way that they're intended to work is incredibly important to bring the checks and balances to the system. And if you can't count on judges to apply the law as it's written, then the system isn't working as it's intended to work. And if judges aren't applying the law as written, it poses a real problem for the litigants and attorneys in front of them, because there's not consistency and efficiency,
Yes.
predictability, and that makes it really difficult for the parties to be able to value their case and figure out, should I take this to trial, or is this something that we should resolve short of a trial? So the consistency and predictability from a judge is incredibly important.
Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, we've got here about your goals. Tell our audience and within the realm and the confines of your statutory duties as a district court judge, tell our listening audience what your goals are, why you think those goals are important to you, and why you think that you are the best candidate for retention in District Court Department 27.
So I like to say that my overall goal, kind of a mission statement, would be consistency and efficiency while protecting the community and safeguarding individuals' rights. The number one thing that I'm always concerned about is public safety. I have my entire career, I was dedicated to public safety as a district attorney. Obviously, it's something that's at the forefront of my mind as a mom. But beyond that, I think that the best way to do that is when I have my discretionary decisions, such as bail settings or sentencings. I think the most important thing we have to think about is this someone, always take into account the unique circumstances of an individual who's in front of me and the underlying crime that happened. And so from those circumstances, I figure out, okay, is this person somebody who poses a real danger to the community, who now owes a real debt to the community that he needs to be sent away to prison and incapacitated for a long time? And, that's something that we face when we have violent or habitual offenders. Or is this someone whose society would be bettered by some sort of rehabilitative option, like a drug court or something like that? Is this someone who doesn't pose a huge threat to the community, and if we maybe get him some help, would we be able to turn him into a benefit to the community? And then as far as the civil cases go, we talked a little bit about the consistency and efficiency. I think it's incredibly important to always make sure people are following the rules and timing deadlines to encourage cases to move along. Whether you're talking about civil or criminal, justice delayed is justice denied is
Yes.
a real thing. And so that's very important to always make sure that we're moving things forward and making sure that the parties are working together to encourage collaboration and get things resolved ahead of time where they can be.
In the civil realm, would you encourage litigants to go through the settlement process? There are several organizations in Clark County, retired judges who act as settlement conference judges, correct?
Yes.
Would you encourage that if there's a close question?
Most cases, settlement options are always a good thing to consider. It's much more cost efficient than going to trial, and also it provides everyone with a level of assurance than if they were to risk going to trial. So those are something that I think are always a great thing to consider. There is the errant case where someone knows that it's going to be very unlikely to resolve ahead of trial. But anywhere that is an option, I would always encourage it, yes.
And then when you have situations such as in a criminal case, we have a settlement process that's been around for about 5 or 6 years now.
Yes.
And it works. It always works for me. But if the litigants come to you in a criminal case and there's a settlement conference, are you required by law to adopt the findings of the settlement judge?
So when a case in front of me goes to a settlement conference, I can't preside over the settlement conference. There has to be another judge. But if the person pleads guilty as a result of the settlement, and then it comes back to me for sentencing, I'm not required to follow that. But if I don't follow it, they are allowed to withdraw their plea start going towards trial again.
All right. But many of the instances, I've never had a case where
Yes.
the district judges did not file, but did
No.
not follow, and the settlements have generally been very, very good. So it is a good process. Now,
Definitely.
let's talk about Erika Mendoza, the judge, and her family life.
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving Day, 2:30 in the afternoon. You're taking the turkey out of the oven, and the phone rings. And on the other line is a detective and an FBI agent, because there's been a mass murder at a Budget Suites, and you're on rotation for a search warrant. What do you tell your children?
Tell them Thanksgiving is on pause. I have to
Okay.
take this call and help
Even
these
though you know
detectives.
you got family from New York, everybody's here, and so you got to tell them. What do you tell them?
I tell them I need to take a call and help these detectives, and however long it takes to work through this warrant
And
process.
you've got to listen to them. So that
Correct.
they're telling, let's say they're talking, you're getting a telephonic search warrant. And so they're telling you, so you're relying on them. Do you absolutely have to issue that search warrant?
Oh, no.
Okay, so you're using your on-the-spot experience.
Yes.
Your duty as a judge, and because your ultimate decision on the search warrant may be subject to review, correct?
Correct.
Like for someone wants to file a court paper that the search warrant wasn't valid, correct?
Yes.
Just in case. So at that moment, even though it's Thanksgiving Day or Christmas, and I gave Judge Talim, I think, the Christmas Day or Christmas Eve scenario. So even though it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, and it's your rotation, and you get that call, you have to do it because that's your duty.
Yes, and that's something that I did for years and years as a district attorney. As a district attorney, we are on call for search warrant duty. Before the detectives call the judge, they run it past a district attorney.
Okay.
So we would have week-long periods where we had the search warrant phone, and we would have to answer the phone at all hours of the day. It wasn't uncommon for me to get several calls over the course of the night where I'd have to talk with detectives about what they were trying to do in terms of a warrant and offer them approval or tell them to go back and try and get
Yes.
more. Also, for the past 5 years at the district attorney's office, I was part of the major violators unit where we are on call, rotating and respond to officer-involved shooting scenes. So when you're on call for that, not only do you have to answer the phone when an officer-involved shooting happens, you actually have to go out in the middle of the night or whenever it happens to the scene and walk through the scene with the investigating detectives and the crime scene analysts and watch body
All
cam
right.
and try and figure out what happened.
Now, let's go into the civil realm. Now, we don't have search warrants in civil cases, but sometimes we might have an injunction. We'll get to it in a minute, but what you might do, but tell the audience what an injunction is, or a temporary restraining order.
So that'll be where, before a trial concludes, the judge agrees to restrict one of the parties from doing something. So, for example, say there is some kind of business dispute, or after someone leaves employment at a business, if there's, for example, a non-compete clause where they're not supposed to work in the similar arena, the judge could issue an injunction saying you're not allowed to work in the same realm of business while this lawsuit is pending. So even though the lawsuit isn't over yet, the judge issues a decision preventing someone from doing something that's related to the lawsuit.
So suppose, for example, there are two television companies who want to broadcast a race at the Speedway. And one of them thought they had a deal, and some other people start lining up their trucks, and that's Friday afternoon, and they file emergency papers, and the next morning, online, they want to file for a motion for a temporary restraining order, and it's assigned in Department 27. Is there any way your staff or someone's going to get a call that's going to say, we need a restraining order today because the race is tomorrow? Is that possible?
Well, they can ask.
They can
and
ask?
They can ask. Everyone can always ask. And then depending on whether or not the parties have enough time to respond and can make the appropriate showing, that would be a decision that's made at the time. Whether or not it can happen in 24 hours kind of depends on the circumstances.
I know it's a tight example, but I'm just saying that you will have,
Yes.
there may come a time when you have these restraining orders
Yes.
that just show up at the end of the day.
Oh,
and
of
you got to
course.
stay there and maybe have an emergency hearing within a few days. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm
So-
always available to review and take something into account. It's never, oh, it's after hours or this isn't the right time. Yes.
So as a district judge, and we'll get into the governor's appointment of you in just a minute, and then we'll give you your final thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But as a district court judge, do you think that during your tenure, you're going to be required to be perhaps assigned to other specialty courts?
Of course, yeah.
And what are some of those specialty courts?
We have a drug court program, we have a mental health court program, we have a veterans court program, we have a TAP or open that we call it, that is particularly for younger offenders. And so those are all, and there's a DUI court program, those are all programs that are assigned for people who are on probation but need kind of a heightened level of probation that gives them even more supervision and resources to really get their life on the right track.
Okay, and then, of course, you've got to keep up with all the rule changes of the local district, of the 8th Judicial District Court.
Of course, yes.
The rule changes promulgated by the Nevada Supreme Court.
Yes.
And then perhaps even go up and testify. Perhaps you may be called upon to testify about some court rules up in the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Or you may be assigned on the Supreme Court for some kind of temporary duty or in the Court of Appeals, correct?
Yes.
So would you say that this is a very busy job?
It is a busy job. Very
Okay,
much
now,
so.
let's talk just briefly, and we'll give you the final thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your appointments. There were several people who applied for the judgeship in Department 27?
Yes.
Okay, and as a result of that, you got the nod from Governor Lombardo.
Yes.
And let me ask this. Is Governor Lombardo's appointment, is that one of his constitutional duties as governor?
Yes.
So it's just not something that he has to do it.
Yes, he has to do it.
And would you say that process was very rigorous?
It was very rigorous. It starts with an application, which was probably the most extensive application I had to do in my entire career. More extensive than for law school, more extensive than to get into the state bar. And you first submit that application, then anyone who submits the application has to go through an interview process with the Judicial Selection Committee. And that committee is comprised of about 8 or 9 local community leaders, not just
Yes.
people in the law, but business
Excuse
people,
me.
politicians. It's a group of people from all walks of life. They interview all of the candidates and they narrow it down to who they think the top 3 are. And then they send those 3 to the governor, and then the governor and his staff interview the 3. All the while, people, both at the Judicial Selection Committee and in the governor's office, is doing their own vetting behind the scenes. And ultimately, the governor chooses who's going to be appointed. And so I went through that process at the very beginning of 2024.
But again, it's a very rigorous process,
Correct.
and it's a very important process because when the governor gives you the nod and says, "I am appointing you because I feel that you're the best person,"
Mm-hmm.
he has to look at the future that you may be in trying a case for billions of dollars of 2 hotels vying for the same piece of land on the Strip,
Mm-hmm.
or someone who's on trial for his life in a death penalty case.
Correct.
So it's very serious.
Yes.
And with those in mind, do you think that and you have bragging rights, that your appointment, your background, and your final thoughts make you the best candidate for retention in Department 27?
I absolutely do. I think that the appointment process adds another layer of assurance for the voters, especially in these judicial races where it's really hard for people who aren't in the legal community to know who might be the best candidate. knowing someone already went through that appointment process and has the stamp of approval from the governor, his team, and the entire judicial selection committee is a really great addition to anyone's resume. Beyond the fact that I already went through that process, I would point out the fact that I have my entire legal career has been dedicated to helping this community and protecting public safety, and that's something that I want to continue to do on a bigger level. I would also point out, we've talked a lot about being able to adjust to the bench and what my prior experience, why that was important to allow me to do that. I think it's incredibly important to remember that there's lots of attorneys out there who don't ever appear in court. And they have important jobs, but it's not the same as those of us who are in court every day. And as a DA, I was in court almost every day for my entire career, doing every different kind of hearing and trial. And having that experience is incredibly important because you learn how to think on your feet and adapt on the fly. And that's a skill that can't be taught but through reps. And so it's really important to have somebody on the bench who has had that in court experience, because you have to make decisions on the fly as objections come. Are you going to let things into evidence? Are you going to let someone ask this question? So that's really important. And also beyond that, I would just point out, whoever you choose for a judicial spot probably hasn't done every area of the law before, because most attorneys don't.
They don't, right?
But there is no one who will ever outwork me. I work harder.
That's good.
Yes. So to the extent there's ever something new in front of me that I don't know, I am always committed to working hard to learn and understand and ask questions where I need to, and ultimately be prepared and make the best decision possible.
What is your bottom line goal as a judicial candidate?
Consistency, efficiency, protecting the community while safeguarding rights.
Thank you. I want to thank our listening and viewing audience. And again, we've been presenting this election special to introduce current District Court Judge Erika Mendoza in District Court Department 27 of the 8th Judicial District Court. You'll see her contact information on the streamer below, and I'm sure that you'll be able to contact her through the website and the Twitter, the X, whatever it is now. And I want to thank everybody. We want to thank Rigel Studios for allowing us to make this presentation. Thank you so much, Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you.